Chapter 4. The Crooked Lantern was a bustling trade hub. Not a single building, but more of a walled compound. Somehow the place managed to convey safe fortress and cosy tavern at the same time. I loved it. The heavy wood door had been polished smooth by the uncounted hands which constantly used it, and the smell of the cooking food that hit me as I entered the inn was intoxicating. The core pulses with desire at the smell. I giggle at the thought of it living through me. The room has a large stone fireplace in the middle, where several different kinds of meat are slow cooking over the smouldering coals, some spiced, others drenched in sauces, and a large stew pot, all fight for my attention. Behind the counter is a grinning old grey, his snowy, streaked beard and wrinkled face juxtaposed with a youthful playfulness in his energy. The old min is balancing a glass cup filled with a purplish liquid atop his head as I approach. He's acting solemn, as if nothing is out of the ordinary. The silver fox grins at me and says, "What's this now? A sage on his pilgrimage?" He waggles his eyebrows, making the cup wobble. I laugh, loving the min's performance, and lean into the bar. "That's right, honoured elder, I am indeed heading to my first posting." The foxman nods, causing the drink to fall into his suddenly waiting hand, which he then offers to me with a toothy grin. "On the house." I grin back and take a decent swig of the offered drink. It sends a jolt of energy through me as it burns my face and nose, hitting my stomach like a punch to the gut. I cough, and my eyes water. Then I grin sheepishly, causing the foxman to burst out laughing, sounding like yips and barking mixed. The bartender manages to squeak out, "You're all right, Sage!" between his guffawing and slapping the bar top. I chuckle at his amusement and give a little bow. I live to serve, to protect, and to save, waggling my eyebrows right back at him. Another bark, and then the old fox asks, "So what'll it be, Sage?" He points over to the slowly rotating sauce-covered haunches. "Those roasts have been cooking for well over a day now. The sauce on that one is first sweet, then hits you with spice, and it'd fall off the bone if you looked at it wrong." My stomach rumbles, and the core's desire flares sharply. I wince. Well, as amazing as that sounds, I'm afraid I actually must ask you if there is any work you need done here, Elder. I gesture to my pack, patting it to showcase its emptiness. I'm afraid I've run out of both supplies and money, and need to earn enough to make it to the next town at least. The old fox nods. I suppose if anyone on the road would be light on wealth and goods, it should be a sage. He looks around at the tavern, and I look with him, seeing the people here now that I'm not fully focused on the food. The inn is about half full. There are a few barmaids serving food and drinks. There is also a small kitchen in the back, with 2 workers pushing out orders. The fox's brows crinkle, and he tilts his head dramatically. "Sage, I don't suppose you'd be willing to take a look over a trade contract with my partners out of Endymion?" He shuffles a little before looking me in the eye. "Prices have gone up. Not just some, and not by a little." He looks annoyed and resigned at once. I know the king's conquest. This elicits a little disgust in his form, and its many failures are driving cost and danger to all caravans. He looks over at his customers. I notice a sense of pride and protection from him. "But these contracts, Sage, I'm being extorted, and I don't know what to do about it." The old min sighs. "If I don't get better terms, Sage, if I lose these suppliers, it won't just be the food and drink. It's medicine, tools, everything we need to survive out here." He gestures around the inn. "It's not just travellers. The families in these hills rely on us for supplies. If I can't make it work, they'll have nowhere to turn but the wilds, and we both know what that means." His voice trails off, the weight of the world settling visibly on his shoulders. So what'll it be, Sage? The fox has my whole attention. I'd never really been good with money, but logic was easy for me. Finding the cracks in conversations, the loopholes in rules, and either fixing and exploiting them is my favourite game. Sages are trained to be part mediator, part philosopher, part psychologist, and part magician. We were taught skills from building cities to organising work crews. We learned how to maintain communities over decades, and my time in the auxiliary had taught me how to run efficient supply trains of materials and food. This task was right up my alley. I grin wolfishly, pulling out the magical pen. It never runs out of ink and writes like a dream, as well as the stamp and wax seal of my office, and say, "I'd be happy to help you, Elder." Several hours later, I am sitting in the common room at my own table, having been served a meal of that amazing meat, whose burn continues to fuel my battle against the paperwork which is strewn about the table. So far, I have managed to find several clauses where the merchants give themselves the right to increase their prices any amount over the course of the contract. They are using sneaky clauses, such as calling it an emergency measure, yet leaving no clear definition as to what an emergency would consist of, and no limit to the number of times it can be applied during this contract, nor establishing a limit to the increase in price can be. With an evil glee which confuses the core as it flows across our link, the feeling of hunting not meshing with the idea of words on paper. But the core was also enjoying my pleasure as I found and dismantled the traps in the contract. I love the way my pen glides across the paper as I rewrite the contract, changing it so that an outline of why a price may go up must always be included. I focused on designing a philosophical and economic mixed approach so that if a price has to increase, then it must be outlined as to why, and that the price must reflect a fair increase commensurate with the risk. Lastly, I added a clause that the price must then decrease once those risks are no longer present, adding in wording that showcases the agreement being about mutual gain and not just the profit of one side. I giggle as I add my stamp to the contract, showing any who looked at it that not only had a professional had been consulted, but that the college was now personally aware of this deal. I sigh internally with satisfaction, part of me marvelling at what it means to be a sage, to complete a job in my new role, and just how different it is compared to my old life. The Silver Fox and his staff give me a little unified bow as I hand him the revised contract. While I was working, they had filled my pack with dried meats and fruits, as well as a few cheese blocks. Lastly, the foxman hands me an intricately engraved bottle of mead, a fine image of the Crooked Lantern's sigil carved along its base. The foxman's smile is warm, his eyebrows waggling, while he extracts a promise from me to visit again some day. I wave over my shoulder as I head out the door, on to my next stop.